I remember growing up and getting out the book called The Farmer's Almanac. Well, we have a guest that has been on our show several times, and he has a brand new book out, and it's called The Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, the ultimate guide to greys, reptilians, hybrids, and Nordics. Which one are you? Today we'll talk with author, extraterrestrial enthusiast, Craig Campobasso, where we explore the origins, physical traits, physical characters, technology, consciousness abilities, dimensional capacities, and belief systems. All about extraterrestrials. It's going to be a great show. Get your questions ready. I'm Tony Sweet with Truth Be Told. Please welcome back to the Truth Be Told studios, the one and only Craig Campobasso.
I love the fake applause.
What fake applause? I don't know what you're talking about.
That's right. We have the studio filled today.
That's right. Well, always a pleasure to have Craig back with us. And every time I have you back, it's like you have another book out. It's like, do you do anything else besides writing books?
I know. I'll have another book out next year.
Oh my gosh.
Also under the MUFON banner,
great.
2022. So look out for that.
Right. Well, I mean, we started with the Stranger at the Pentagon. So that was our first encounter with you that it was a pleasure of getting to go to the screening, I remember, and having you on the show. But now the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, and you put this together. Why and how?
Well, it was really, it's actually a fascinating story. In early 2009, my literary agent called me and he said, hey, I got a great idea for a book. And I even have the title. It's called The Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, and you're the man to write this book. And of course, he knows that because he knows my whole history of being an experiencer, right, and also writing the autobiography of an extraterrestrial saga, which is now a 4-part book series. Wow. which brought me into this giant world of extraterrestrials. So anyway, and I said, God, I could write that book. And he said, I can sell it. And I said, well, he said, so do up a proposal and send it to me. So I did it up. I sent it to him. And he sold the book in 4 days.
Oh, my God. Wow.
And I went, wow, the universe must really want a book like this out there if it happened that fast, because nothing ever happens that fast in the publishing world. So anyway, I began, writing it and going through all of my research. And at the age of 26, I had a giant spiritual awakening. I began my in-depth research into ufology. I don't consider myself a ufologist, although I hang out with all of them.
Right.
And I go on cases with them. And I have seen things with them, including I caught an extraterrestrial on film, which is the last picture in the back of the book. Anyway, so what I did was, so a lot of people want to know how I came up with 82 races.
Right.
Look,
that's my question.
There's so many races out there in the universe. No one could even, fathom knowing exactly how many there are. Although one of the Alpha Centaurian contactees, I believe, said that there were something like 1,019,000 that they knew of different species that they knew of.
Holy crap.
And if you go to the Urantia book, it names all the planets in the universe as a number and we are number 5,342,482,337,666.
Wait a minute, I'm gonna write that
So,
down.
yeah, so actually had to write that out phonetically to read it
Right.
because it's like so many numbers. I've never. You're like, wait, is that trillion, quadrillion, or what is that?
Right.
So anyway, so what I did is I have read a lot of the very early contactee books, and there were 65 of them done by Colonel Wendell Stevens, as everyone in ufology knows who he is. I went and I got permission to pick the books that I wanted to use for enclosure in the book about the interesting bits about the contacts. And then what the publisher wanted was a thumbnail review of all of the various aspects that you mentioned at the beginning. And then in the back of the book, I have further reading. So if you liked learning about the Clermer race, which was from an actual contactee from a Wendell Stevens case, then you could go to the back of the book. Oh, there he is. Yes. I have a great picture of me, him, and Dr. Frank together.
Oh my God.
That's
a keeper.
Yeah, that's a really good keeper. And so you could go to the back of the book, and then you could see, oh, okay, I can go read this book and get it. Now, here's the thing. All of those Wendell Stevens books are they're not gettable, right? You can't buy them, or if you do, they're for $1,000 on, Amazon. So his daughter, Cece, has a website called UFOphotoarchives.com. People can go there and they can buy all of his books in a PDF format. They can buy them as a group.
Wow.
All the books at once. I think it's like $160. That's the last time I remember.
Right.
Which isn't bad
for
65 books.
Right.
So I went there. I've met several contactees, so I went to them directly and got their personal authorization to do the story. So I reread the books, I do my thumbnail review, and I actually have everyone read what I wrote to make sure everything was accurate to their liking, because this was basically their story. Right. In the case of Maurizio Cavallo, who is in contact with a human race called the Clarions. Now, there are many other contactees with the Clarions as well that date back. There was Elizabeth Clare. I remember there was another guy in Peru, and now there's many people in Peru or in Italy, Maurizio Cavallo. So he actually had photographs of a male named Sewell, which he allowed me to include in the book. And then this is the female Clarion.
Oh, wow. Beautiful eyes.
Yeah, look at the features, though. Look at how doll-like they are.
It does, yeah.
And her name is Nelfa, and she deals with astrobiology and chronoastronomy dimensional, right? He also showed me a picture of a man with a very elongated head, a human man, and he said that he was a Venusian time operator. I did not use that picture in the book because I had a different section on Venusians, and of course I used what's behind me, the Stranger at the Pentagon Venusians, as well, because we had actual photographs of Elian Thor, Dawn, and Jill. So anyway, so I was able to use those. Then I took it a step further, going into every time I would meet an abductee or something, I would always say, did you ever have an encounter with the mantis being, right? And everyone would say yes, but they didn't really understand it, or they didn't know, because sometimes in abductions, mantis beings are seen lurking in the background there, either observing or watching the proceedings. So anyway, I found a woman who is an actual mantis hybrid.
Oh, wow.
I also found a woman who I had met many years ago who was an Arcturian hybrid from Arcturus. So I was able to speak to both of them extensively and include what they know. In fact, the woman, her name is Vivian Chauvet. I think her website is Healing to the Stars, something like that. But if you type in Vivian Chauvet or Chauvet, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Lovely lady. She sort of sat me down one day and she started just reading through my soul history here and in the stars. And she said, now close your eyes, and that the Arcturians will bring you on board the craft, right? So I closed my eyes, and the minute I closed my eyes, all of the energy around me went boom, 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 like it was just like these dimensional rings going up.
Right.
And it was an amazing experience. I don't remember being on the craft or opening my eyes and seeing anything. But when she said to open my eyes, my entire energy had escalated to such a high vibration. And everything I saw from the minute I opened my eyes were dimensions of gold. Everything was gold. So
right.
that was like a really fascinating, amazing experience as well. So
well, don't they use most of the I'm trying to think. I'm having that middle-aged brain fart.
I know. Well, we all get
anyway, they came here to the Earth to actually mine gold for their own.
Well, yeah, that was the Anunnaki. That was the Anunnaki, but in spiritual terms, gold is the color for Father God.
Got it. Okay.
Right?
Right.
Silver is the color for Mother God. And then a lot of times those colors are mixed with the bright white light.
Great. Yeah.
Right. So when you see a high vibration of gold mixed with white light, that is a very high celestial vibration as well. I just love watching your head in between.
I know, right? Looks like it's trying to either
in
crush
between
my head or hold my
snake
head.
woman's, looks
like a chiropractor.
Hands, right. Yeah, she's gonna fix your neck there. So, so anyway, and the reason that I chose 82 races is because I had to keep the book under 300 pages. I was a big fan of Paul Hellyer, who we just lost, the former Canadian Minister of Defense.
Yes.
And one of the last interviews he gave, he said that he knew of 82 races that were visiting the Earth. So I decided to take his number and use that to see if it fit under the 300 pages, because in the back of the book, I also put a thing for everyone, just so it's not repetitive in the entire book, for everyone, what the Galactarian alignment of space peoples and planets is, what are their fleet ships, what are their Merkaba vehicles, what are their motherships, what are their plasma craft, scout ships, starships, thought ships. Then I have a whole section on cosmic law, which are the rules that the enlightened beings live by. And then there are the cosmic laws for the dualistic beings out there in the universe, which is a whole different set.
Let me ask you this before you go on real quick. So the cosmic law, do you feel that humans, this race of beings, are living up to the cosmic law? Because
no,
I was going to say, I don't feel like we're
no, because I mean, these are laws when you are fully conscious.
Got it.
And all of the extraterrestrials um, that are enlightened are fully conscious. They are fully telepathic, and they are that also goes along with telepathy is that, so if you and I were fully conscious and we were having a conversation telepathically, I would exchange in that thought all of the feelings that went along with the experience.
Right.
So you would be the experiencer of everything I experienced, and vice versa. So we are actually gleaming new experiences that is therefore becomes a part of the makeup of our soul, which makes us even more beautiful beings because we're seeing the inward beauty of what everyone has had to go through.
Got it.
Right? Believe
Yeah.
me, they have trials and tribulations too.
Oh, I'm sure.
They just know how to deal with it, but there is still hurt and sorrow and things of that nature, right? That they also have to work through. So and I learned all of that through my experience of writing the autobiography of the E.T. book saga and the Stranger at the Pentagon script as well, because all of those beings, that was their process with me, so I could write from their heart, their experience. So it was really a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Well, how do you think? And I don't mean to get off the subject completely, but when we'll get back to what you were talking about. But so with that many different species, I mean, let's just say the 80, how many? 82.
82.
82.
Right.
So just out of 82, there has to be certain species they may not live up that are well beyond their consciousness than we are, but yet are not living up to the law. Because we hear about, the grays are not always the nicest species. Yeah. So how do you think other species are dealing with, the criminals of that cosmic law? I mean, how do you think they're dealt with?
Well, when they break a cosmic law, there are created beings that are in charge of sectors of the universe. And then in there, they're also a part of the angelic realms. They're a part of others. So it sort of goes from the created beings on down, right? So then they go and they try to counsel them or whatever. And if sometimes there are serial breakers of that law. So then they go to a prison planet, and they have a trial, and then whatever the outcome of that trial is, some not a lot, but some are so nefarious that they even go on a trial in the very end after a long span of time has gone by, like a couple 100,000 years.
Oh, wow.
Okay. To see if there's any redemption in them. And if there's not, then they go on a trial for what they call a soul death. So if they do, then their soul, how they explained it is, it gets recycled back into the one soul, but it's no longer the singular soul that it used to be. So there's a death of that lineage, but the life is still there, right?
Right.
So it's interesting because, yes, I mean, we do, we know that there are malevolent grays, reptilians. We know that there are good grays, good reptilians as well. I've met many people who have had incredible encounters with fully conscious reptilians. So
really,
and as they fold into the light, they sort of help and try and restructure whatever culture they came from to, turning to have more of an equilibrium, because really becoming fully conscious is tuning your light and dark to be in this modus operandi where you start working from the heart and no longer the ego or the mind. And so you start doing service to all of humanity across the universe instead of service to self.
When you were reading these books and getting to know, most of these, because I mean, there's no way you can learn about all the species if there's that many, and like you said, you chose just the 82 to kind of focus on, because we're talks about origins. How do we know the origins of these 82, or do you know origins of all 82?
Well, the origins come from the actual contactees, where they are having these conversations with extraterrestrials, and they are actually they tell them where they're from. They tell them different things. Like, for instance, let me just find it. So we're all really familiar with the Betty and Barney Hill case, right? I'm good.
60th anniversary, I think, this year.
That's right. Yeah. And the Kathleen Martin, just, same publisher as myself. They just came out with a revised book of that, which of course I got and gobbled up. So I talked to Kathleen extensively about the case. And so I'm just trying to find it here. Oh, yeah.
Stump the guest.
Well, I'll find them. But anyway, the thing was, they had shown Betty on a star map where they were from.
Right.
And later on in hypnosis, Betty did it. And then years later, when our astronomers had charted that section of the universe, the reticulum, they actually Zeta Reticuli. So they come from Zeta Reticuli in the Reticulum constellation, for instance. So that was brought forth directly from there. But really, if you think about the universe, you think about our planet, you think about all the other planets, you think about motherships and all of the different things, there is integration there with all of the different races and all the different colors of skin. And I mean, there literally are every color of skin beings out there. And it's interesting because when Dr. Frank was alive, he told me once when he was on the starship, he said, on one of my first trips there, I saw some people who had a watercolor wash skin, and I saw other people who had a zebra-like skin, right?
That'd be nice.
and I thought, okay, well, I've never seen that, but I just filed it away. I never discussed it again. And then my buddy Tom Dongo and I decided to do a couple of radio shows together, and he's telling a story of Linda Moulton Howe talking about meeting a contactee, and the beings they were in contact with had zebra skin. Right? Not cool. It's not. I don't think like the fur,
right?
But it's the markings.
The markings,
right?
Right.
The markings, right? So I mean, all of these things are out there. They're all fascinating. They're all, they're just. It's out there. Like Dr. Frank always used to say to a lot of people, because he got so much flack for the Valiant Thor story in the early days. People are much more open now and that kind of thing. I mean, he would get hatred, and I mean, it was really sad. I mean, he would show me some of the things that people would write, and then just the other day, I came across this wonderful sentence that Albert Einstein said: "The mind is like a parachute. It only works if we keep it open." And I thought, wow, that sums it up right there.
Right.
So,
That right.
yeah.
Well, you know, I know, and you also in your book, you also talked about physical characteristics, and even as a kid, I always thought that it was amazing how pretty much all species on this planet have really, you know, the two eyes, the nose,
Right.
the mouth, the ears, and I always thought that it was fascinating. And then when I started seeing, you know, alien species being characterized through people's, you know, abductions and just being seen throughout the world, they had the same thing: two eyes, maybe not a full nose, but you know, they had the nostril holes.
Always nostrils, right?
Yeah, and even ears. At least they had some kind of nubs or something.
Yeah.
And so, do you think this could be one of the characteristics that kind of links us all back to the main source of what created us in the beginning anyway? Or why do you think the characteristics are?
Whew.
I
Yeah,
mean, there may be the
there
praying
is
mantis.
so much.
Yeah.
There is so much. When I asked Dr. Frank about the different color skins, he said, I asked Valiant Thor about that, and he said it was due to the suns where the planets that they lived on that created that color of skin, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we all know people with impetigo and things like that.
Right.
And no matter what color your skin is, underneath that color, it's pink.
Right.
It's the color of love, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I looked at it. And you know, so if we take that analogy and we think of a gray living for who knows how many years, were they living underground on their world?
Right.
Were they living on the surface? Were they living in scientific things? Did they used to have 5 fingers and then it went to 4? And then some of them have a prong, a 4-prong that goes like this. Some of them have suction on the bottom of their hands and feet. There's just so many different things, and the reproductive stuff. I mean, I never talked about that, but there are so many different reproductive things with a lot of these different species that is really, really quite fascinating. So
I remember
that is different from ours.
Of course. Now I remember when I was in high school many years ago. But my science teacher would say that because we rarely use our pinky finger, that evolution eventually we probably will lose it because we don't really use it that much as humans. Like we use the thumb, you know, and these fingers, but the pinky we don't really use. So that, you know, as we evolve and our body's like, we don't need that anymore, so let's just slowly get rid of it. But I mean, it makes sense when, you know, certain aliens may have 4 fingers. Well,
yeah.
Well, this always 30 minutes in. I always ask our people in the chat room if they have any questions. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if we had time, I wanted to tell you a little story about my biological father.
Oh yeah, you were oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah, tell me about this before we take questions. Please.
Okay. I'll make it a short one.
No.
So when I was writing the book, I was contacted by a genealogist, and she she told me we were cousins, you know, down the line, like 3rd or 4th or 5th cousins. And she wanted information on my mother's father, which I gave her. And I said, hey, I said, my mom told me when I was 12 that my dad was my stepdad, and that I had a biological father, and she didn't know him that well, and that all she knew was his name. She had a picture of him, which she gave me. It got lost over the years. I don't know what happened to it. So anyway, to make a long story short, while I'm writing the ET Almanac, um, somewhere down the line, she finds him. She said he's passed away in 2006. Um, this is where he's buried. And I said, well, I'm going to go down there tomorrow. And I did, and I went to the front desk and I said, look, this is my father who's buried here. Do you have a name of anybody that called when he passed away? And they looked it up in their thing, and they said, yes, we do. It was a man's name. He had a different last name than my bio father. And so I went and visited my dad's gravesite, and came home, looked the man up. He lives around the corner from me, literally.
Oh no, really?
And he is a 74-year-old man at that time. And so all I could find was an address. So I wrote a letter, told my story, put a picture in there. 2 days later, I got a phone call from his son who said, my dad got your letter. And I said, oh, was your dad friends with Fred? And he said, no, actually, it's his half brother. And I went, oh, wow. So you're like my cousin. And he goes, well, I guess I am. He goes, normally we wouldn't respond to something like this, but you look exactly like him. And anyway, later on, after I got to know them well, I'm still very, very close to them. My uncle, I kept telling him, I said, we have Spanish blood from your mother. And he's like, well, no, we're not Spanish. We're Italian and Greek and this and that, because they had different fathers, right?
Right.
So I said, go do the one of the sites. So he did, and he goes, oh yeah, it connected me to you right away. And I said, well, that's how we found Fred. So, and he goes, I'll be darned, we have Spanish blood. So anyway, so I go out to dinner with him and my cousin. And about an hour in, he says, oh, so your father was, he loved the military. He loved the Air Force. When he was, a late teenager, he really wanted to go into the Air Guard, and he begged our mother to sign a paper for him to go in, which she did. And when he turned 18, they put him in the Air Force. He went into intelligence. He told me all the places where he was. And then he says, oh, and by the way, he was a part of Project Blue Book. Can you believe that?
Wow.
I was like, what? So anyway, I went on, and the similarities between him and I didn't stop there. When he left the Air Force and he came back, he somehow was able to join IATSE, and he became the head of construction for movie sets at Warner Brothers. So here I am. I've been in the movie industry since I was 15. Right.
Child star.
And I know, right? So, casting movies,
right,
and, producing, writing, directing, and all of that. And I just thought it's just so fascinating that, all this time I had no idea. And I was like, God, I would have loved to have, at least just sit down with him and talk. And of course, my uncle and cousin said, oh, because I have 3 cousins, right, all guys. And he goes, yeah, me and my brother tried to drag stuff out of him. He would never talk. And I said, well, he could keep a good secret because he never told you about me. Right. And they go, yep. Good point.
I just think that's crazy that you pretty much went down the same path as your dad without even knowing it. That's the crazy part of it.
Yeah. So I dedicated the book to him. And I put his little Air Guard picture in there because it's the only closest thing that I had, because they really didn't have that much of him, because after his wife died, he was like for 10 years just distraught, and he just sold everything and never worked again. So he had a very rough end, and a very sad end.
Right.
And that type of thing. So
that's too bad to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, how
Well,
about them apples?
but
That's pretty
that's, I
cool.
mean, that's a movie waiting to happen right there.
Happen right there. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I know a good casting director for that movie.
For that one, right?
Well, that's a great. I mean, great that you share that with us, because it all ties back into what you've been,
Doing.
yeah,
Yeah.
doing and putting out. And but uh, if you guys are just tuning in, you can see on the screen we have the amazing Craig Campobasso, and he wrote this book. Look at this book. I mean, that who did the graphics first of all? The Extraterrestrial Species
Wow.
Almanac. That's
Isn't that amazing?
it's
I didn't
yeah,
know what they were going to put on the cover,
that's great.
and they actually had their in-house artists do that. And when I first saw it, I was like taken aback. I was
Yeah,
like, "Oh my God," and then I was like, "Okay, well, let me just look into this being on the cover." And I was like, "This okay? This is not a negative being. This
yeah. You
is,
can tell it's not a.
you can yeah, you can definitely tell, and it's a female
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing." So I sort of, released, but then of course I thought, what is a publisher going to put on there but something to grab people's eyes to pick up the book? That's what all publishers do.
Right,
So,
right.
and yeah, it's a pretty amazing book cover. So,
All right. So in the chat room, we have Adric C has a question that says, "Have you recently communicated with any ETs? Recently?"
well, my communication is, if I'm writing, I can make the telepathic connection that goes with whatever I'm writing. Or sometimes I might just feel them come in and give me a bit of advice, or put an idea in my head of that sort. So, but those are all humans,
Mm-hmm.
human ETs, and mainly from the Pleiades, from Venus, Arcturus, and Sirius.
And the next question we have here is, do where is it at? I just lost it. Oh, do the species, it could be any of the 82, could be any of the trillion, whatever's out there, do the species intermix? Have you heard of the mix of these species?
Well, like humans, of course, yes. There are, in the with the darker species, they will try and create really abominable hybrids that they can genetically alter in mind, in body, to do what they want them to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they can do that, and they can mass populate them. They can create a whole new race. They can
Right.
do all different types of things like that. They are master geneticists, master beyond anything that even our people on this planet are able to do. And we know that they can do a lot here, right?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
So, yeah. So, and as we know, a lot of the hybrid programs with good races and malevolent races are happening all over the planet, which have been talked about with through abductees,
Right.
experiencers, contactees, things like that. They've been taken to see the children. They've been taken to see the different things, because what they really found out is, um, that, how I understand it, through um, regressors, the top regressors of this type of UFO abduction and experiencers, is that after a certain period of time, and I can't remember if it's 49 or 39 days, that's when the soul hooks in. That's usually when they take it, and then they incubate it. But then if it is not held by the original parent, right, that
Mm-hmm.
that the child will tend to fade away and die.
Oh, wow.
So that's why a lot of these things sort of happen that way.
Yeah.
Especially with human hybrids, even if they're being mixed with reptilian or what have you. There's another interesting thing too that I'll just throw out there is that some races come here to study us.
Right.
And there are starseeds on the planet that are a part of that race. So there is a contract that is done. So they're able to extract DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And then what they do is they create hybrids, because those hybrids that will become them down the line so that they can sustain themselves here for the thousands of years that they're going to be here to do the study.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating?
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, I sometimes I imagine that we're like a big zoo, and there are zookeepers. I'm just waiting for my belly to be rubbed and and yeah, I feel like sometimes like we know that they're there for a reason, and they're there, kind of using us as observing us. So yeah, I'm like, well, maybe we're just a big, a zoo that like the Bronx Zoo. People come and just.
But I think what people really need to know is, even though there may be bad experiences and malevolent experiences and things like that people can call upon the protection,
right,
and receive that protection. I've had many people through other people in the UFO community come to me, and I've created. I had a dream one night many years ago where Archangel Michael came to me and said, "I want you to create this symbol," and it was called the Universal Seal of Protection.
Oh, wow!
And this seal is the 3 M's. The blue M is for Michael, the silver M is for Metatron, and the gold M is for Metatron, and the silver M is for Father Melchizedek, who is the architect of the University of Melchizedek, which is the spiritual university for our universe.
Oh, that's
right.
amazing.
This is where all the Living Light programs come from. It's where the Starseed programs come from, and all of that. So if people are interested in that, they can read about it in any of my books. It's always mentioned. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So just like on planet Earth, we have, USA, Russia, China. We're the global leaders. So who do you feel and who do you think are the powerful Oz when it comes to the alien species? Who do you think has the most power? And do you think the angelic world? Because sometimes I believe like the Nordics and certain ones can be considered angels. I don't know if that's something that you would consider, but do you think that they have the power over the most species?
So created beings are basically the angelic core.
Right.
Right. There would be different classes. I would place Valiant Thor as a seraphim of the highest class. And then there are different angelics in the core that are there. Believe me, they are looking after every single country, what they're up to, what they're doing. They have already showed them that they can turn their nukes off and then they can turn them on. Right. They're not going to let them destroy the planet. In fact, Valiant Thor, there's a woman, I've met a few people who met Valiant Thor in the early days, and in the, I believe in the early 60s. And this woman was a teenager, and she said that Valiant Thor was with Dr. Frank and that they met them all out in the desert. They were a UFO group, and they were all very afraid of the Cuban Missile Crisis and being blown up. And Valiant Thor assured them that he and others like him were here to make sure that that never happens and that it will never happen. So all the powers know that they don't have power over that. They're not going to let them destroy the planet or do anything like that, but they have to let our own evolution evolve, going down the negative pathway, because going
Right.
down the negative pathway is the only way. When you hit rock bottom, you got to go back up.
Right.
And
Right.
and they're not going to do it for us, of course, but they can be here to assist us, to guide us, to give us direction, to do all of those things. I am sure that they are in contact with all people, all people in power and things of that nature. I mean, I remember hearing a few people writing about Valiant Thor saying, oh my God, he's a demon. He worked at the Pentagon and he's in bed with them. And I'm like, well, an angel, you would want to be there so he could
Right.
see what's going on to make sure that it doesn't go awry, right?
Right.
So and of course none of these beings have ever harmed anyone. Lots of people have had different experiences with Valiant Thor, some of his crew members, other ETs. I mean, a woman wrote me a while ago talking, she asked me if I ever heard of the peppered Pleiadians, because she was being contacted by them and they had this peppered looking skin. And I said, no, never heard of them. I said, that's, again, that's another interesting case to explore.
I love it. Well,
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating because, we've talked about so many different species in the 8 years I've been on air, and it's fascinating because every single year it seems like there's a new species that comes out of the woodwork. So, well, Jesse wants to know what was the first. I think we kind of talked about this, but maybe not. What's the first UFO book Craig has ever read?
I think it probably was the Billy Meyer contacts. Way back when.
That's a good one.
Because it was an actual dialogue between him and Semyaze. And I thought that was extremely fascinating. And I gobbled up those books, just, seeing what that was. And at that time, I lived at the Bodhi tree in the UFO section every week to see if a new book came out, and I would buy it and gobble it and see if I could go to a conference or something where that person was, to hear them talk about it, to get an extension of the book, of what they were trying to convey, and that type of thing. So those were, I think that was the first series of books, because I think that there were many of them, and they were put out by Wendell Stevens.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Okay, well, I'm going to take a couple more, and then we'll kind of get ready to close out. But Craig's always a wealth of knowledge, and even George Norrie did a foreword on your book.
Did.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he did. That's
amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, I when I saw that, I was like, Craig, look at you.
I know, right?
Okay, so do aliens ever die? I know we talked about if we get some bad aliens and they go before the councils and all that stuff, but do you think aliens ever die? I mean, my theory is like energy never dies. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. So how the extraterrestrial enlightened worlds look at it as you can go through a long lifetime. So let's say, certain planets are designed, I'm going to go and sign up for a life on planet X,
right,
because it's scientific and I want to really learn about the exploration of science throughout the universe. And on this world, the average lifespan is 2,000 years because of their technology.
Right.
Right. So you can go and you can do that. Really, it's basically up to the soul. I mean, a lot of people I know, when they get into their 80s and 90s, I've talked to them extensively about their life, and they just don't want to be here anymore. So they sort of will
Yeah.
themselves to go back, and then they'll create a new thing. So your soul is eternal, that is having different experiences, is
Mm-hmm.
how I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And some people want to stay around a lot longer, and some want to leave a little sooner, and things of that nature. So
That's
so
true.
but if you have to look at it. If you're with a mate up there in the realm where you're both living to 2,000 years,
Right.
you're not going to be with the same person the whole time. So it's interesting that they have different things where they have soul history with different souls, and when different ones come in, they have the conversation about if they can go and be with this person for a while,
Right.
and then they come back to the other person, and or vice versa. And yes, and this can also be in bisexual relationships, or however they want, but all parties are in agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, interestingly enough, the Lemurians, who are below Mount Shasta, that what they do is, as they grow up, they are allowed to have up to, I think it was 10 to 15 different partners,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
And then over a certain period of time, not all at once, but then what they do is, when they get to the point of choice, they have to pick the person that they are going to bond with for the rest of their life,
Right. Wow.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it's done there. And so everything is a little different experience, and that kind of thing. But
I have to say, when you
yeah,
said about how human beings in their 70s, I remember my mom, when she passed away, she was 79. 2 months before she passed away, because I talked to my mother every day. I
yeah,
was a mama's boy, and she did tell me. She said, I'm ready, and I was like, what? And 5 years before that, 2 years before that, I'd be like, no, mom, don't do it. Stay here. And I have to
yeah,
say, but seeing her suffer the way she did, I was like, that's something
yes,
that between you and God, and that's something
that's right,
that's your choice. And then
that's
from that
right.
point out, she went fairly quickly after that. So, like, it is a willful death
It
or
is.
willful
It
release.
is. Yeah,
So
we are all in charge of our own souls.
yeah,
People,
yeah,
people would really understand that you have the power of thought to create anything you want,
yeah.
good or
Well,
bad.
right. Well, we only have just about a minute left, but I'm going to put in the chat room. Craig, tell us about what you're offering for people that buy the book.
Oh, sure. So you can get the Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, and I will personalize it and sign it for you. The website's autobiography of unanet.com, and then slash other dash books. So you just press on the tab when you go to the website. You can get it there. I also have the Universal Seal of Protection cards on that
Oh,
page,
great.
and also my funny book of a movie I cast 25 years ago that just got re-released, called The Silence of the Hams, right? ETs and comedians and Earth comedians. And then on the homepage is my four-part book series called The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga. And people can buy all four books with one click, or buy them individually. And of course, I personalize and sign them. And then if anybody wants to watch Stranger at the Pentagon, which is right behind me, that's our movie poster, and Victor won right there. And they can go to strangeratthepentagon.com. I also, under buy book and DVD, I have all of Dr. Frank's out of print books, including Stranger at the Pentagon and Outwitting Tomorrow, which are both highly sought after. The movie DVD, all 4 posters, Valiant Thor t-shirts, because people just begged me to do it. So I finally
Please,
just had to
Craig,
do it. Oh my
please.
God, they wanted their Valiant Thor t-shirts so bad. So I had a wonderful comic book artist do
Oh, that's
them.
great.
So yeah, it was really cool.
And you said you're working on a documentary, right?
Oh yes, and right now I'm creating the Extraterrestrial Species documentary. So it's going to be an
Awesome.
extension of the book with all big giant professionals who are going to be talking about things never discussed before in a documentary.
Ooh.
Yes, yes. We're actually also speaking to a man who's was visited for 13 days by a celestial being. So we're going to learn all about the celestial realms.
13 days? I can't even take my family for 2.
I know, right? So I mean, it's going to be mind blowing, and we're bringing all the extraterrestrials to life through CGI.
Oh, wonderful!
Yeah, that's going to be really cool.
When is it out?
Really cool.
Do we know yet?
It'll be at least a year from now. Yeah,
right.
or sooner.
All right.
So,
well, if you need a CGI, let me know. I can fill in for one. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Well, Craig, always thank you so much. You're the greatest, and appreciate you for always bringing the most interesting books and stories and research. It's always fun, and everybody in the chat room saying they love it. And so everybody in the chat room, yes, and everybody in the chat room, thank you for your questions and just tuning in every Friday for Truth Be Told. It's fun to have my co-host in the chat room. But again, thank you, and come back next time. Hopefully, you can get it in studio. So
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, all right. I love your studio.
Right, right. And
awesome.
Well, I appreciate it. But everybody out there, thank you so much. Again, subscribe, share the show, subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel. But until next time, I'm Tony Sweet. We'll see you next week. It's going to be a great show. Talk to you soon. Bye. This has been another episode of Truth Be Told. Thank you so much for watching. Recorded live at UBN Go Studios in Burbank, California. Join us on social media. Facebook, Truth Be Told Radio. Instagram, Truth Be Told Paranormal. Go to Truth Be Told Worldwide for more information on upcoming shows. Okay.
Oh, wait. Are you there?
I'm there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.